there, new to PEC as well. They want to get into children's ministry in the near future. So with coming on with PEC, it kind of gets them established as licensed ministers. And he as well, he also came back from Army basic training. He was Navy for 5 years. And so he's only got 15 years left. I don't know how many seconds that is. I'll figure that out. And so, but anyways, welcome Daniel and Elizabeth. And they will be speaking tomorrow. So, and as you all know, this is the vice president. So for you two, this is the vice president of PEC, Pastor Doug Pfitzer, and he's going to bring the word to us for about a half an hour, for as long as you want. Pretty short.
It'll probably be a half hour.
Okay.
Something like that. Like I said earlier, I'm excited about PEC and where we're going with this. And when we were talking earlier,
Hello.
There you go.
usually my voice travels. So I don't.
Yeah.
Larry mentioned something about not everybody's going to be on your calling. And I thought, wow, God is just saying, because the title of my message is Jesus walked on the water, but only Peter accepted the invitation. It's the name of my the sermon tonight, and it'll be Matthew 14, 22 through 32. Need your sword? Father, I thank you, Lord, for the opportunity that we have, Father, as an organization, Jesus, that to restart, Lord, and I just thank you for the opportunity that I have tonight to speak to our fellow ministers, and Father, just make the words that you gave me just minister to each one of us, Father, and just use my voice, use my words, and just all be to your glory in your name, Jesus. Amen. In verse 22, immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go out ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was all alone, and the boat was already considerably distant from land, buffeted by the waves, because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was terrified and began to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." There is so much to this little story. I kind of just dissected it, and the disciples were out in the boat trying to get to the other side, and Jesus appears. Unexpected encounter with Jesus. And it was late, and they'd been working, they'd been rowing, and they were still in the middle of the lake, fighting the wind and the waves. And they'd been there all night, not seeming to go too far because they weren't very far out there. And just before dawn, Jesus shows up. Just before the dawn, they say it's always the darkest. And how many times if we're going through a trial, we're on the lake rowing and trying to get across, and it seems hopeless, it's dark, that's when Jesus shows up. That's when the Master shows up. So this is where they were. They were out trying their hardest. And when it's the darkest and the toughest, they're wondering if they're ever going to get through. I can imagine in a little boat, Jesus was there. And this is where my story begins, though. This is where the part that really, really spoke to me. Jesus shows up knowing the situation they're in, knowing what's happened to them. He said, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." In the midst of the storm, all is going on in the wind. Peter still hears his master's voice. Some thought it was a ghost and were afraid. But Peter hears Jesus' voice. He recognizes his voice. He knows his voice. "Master, if that's you, tell me to come." And what does Jesus say? "Come. Come." This is where Peter separates himself from the rest of the disciples. "Let me come to you out on the water." Peter went from being afraid in the boat to not being afraid out of the boat with Jesus. Peter had faith in Jesus. Peter had confidence in Jesus. Two things Peter knew. He was in a storm. Jesus was there to save him. That's the two things Peter knew. He was in the storm, but Jesus was in the storm, and he was safe with Jesus, right? He showed no hesitation. Out of the boat he went. Out of the boat. No regards to the wind. No regards to the waves. No hesitation. He was out of the boat, walking on the water to Jesus. Peter heard the call, and Peter left the safety of the boat where he was. I mean, sometimes we kind of get to being comfortable in the safety of the boat. And that's not like Jesus, what he's calling us to be. He really don't want us to be comfortable where we're at, because if we're comfortable, we're really not growing.
That's right.
You know, if you're comfortable where you're at, you're not growing. And we're all here part of PCs. Growing, being stretched to do things. So Jesus is saying, "Come on, out of the boat," to us. But Peter jumped out of the boat into the angry sea when all the others stayed. Why do you think he did that? Because Jesus called him, and he had a hunger to want more of Jesus. He wanted more of Jesus. If Jesus was calling him out into an angry body of water, that's where he was going. That's where because he trusted Jesus. He wanted to be with Jesus. And that's Peter's mentality. I want to be where Jesus is. That boat was full of disciples. How many more disciples was there? And this part of the story is very revealing, because we know where Peter's heart was. I want to be out with Jesus. I want to be there. No matter what's going on here, I want to be with Jesus. But what about the others? Because Jesus said, "Come." That was Peter was the only one that left the safety of the boat, left the comfort where he was, to the call of Jesus. He answered Jesus' call to come. You may say, "Well, he sunk." Yeah, he sunk, but he knew where to go. He cried out to Jesus. And he had an experience because he was willing to take a risk to go. He had the experience that the other disciples in the boat could not share, because he was willing. And I believe that's where we're all heading here today. We are willing to go where Jesus wants you to go, where Jesus wants us to go. He's calling us, "Come, come." I will be with you. He may be calling you out to deep water where others aren't willing to go. Other ministers may not be willing to go, but he may be calling you. And that's kind of what touched me when you were talking about Paul. You know, Paul has a vision, and he was told, you know, not to be so excited about it because they didn't catch his vision. Paul sees a vision, so that's where his heart is. And Jesus may call us out into the water where we have to trust him and only him. Because when Peter followed Jesus, he walked on the water. He went from the natural to the realm of the supernatural, because man does not walk on water. That's the law of nature. But gravity, man does not walk on water. Peter did it with Christ, through Christ. And if Jesus is calling us out, others may not want to go, we need to go. We should go. Because Peter, that's the desire of our hearts. And sometimes it's fear that keeps us in the boat. It really is. It's fear of the unknown. It's fear, what will people think of me? What will people say? It's fear that keeps us in the boat. And Jesus may be asking us to do something that the world thinks crazy. The world thinks it's crazy. Why are you doing that? And there's not everybody, like I said, will agree with your calling. If you look at this story, I looked it up in Mark and in John. Not a word about Peter walking on the water. Not a word. They told of Jesus walking on the water. They told of Jesus calming the storm. That's the recollection of this story. I thought to myself, how could you be in a boat with your friend who has this incredible encounter with Jesus, gets out of the boat, walks on the water, and you say nothing in your Gospels about this? Wow. How could that be? What were they looking at? You know, what were they missing? Where was their heart? And that's what sometimes Jesus is asking us to do things. Others aren't going to catch your vision. They may even put you down. But if Jesus called you, that's the road you need to travel. That's the water you need to get out on. And Justin, I think about that for you. Jesus has called you into this. And if the waters are rough, Jesus has called you. Don't look at the waters as Peter did. Don't look at the waves. Look at him. Because he's got great things for you. I know he does. He's got great things for this organization. Because I know not everybody's going to have the same vision. Not everybody's going to like what God calls you to do and what calls each one of us to do. You're always going to have opposition. But Jesus is calling us out. Jesus has something for us to do. And you can even be in a church service where he wants to call you out. He wants to minister with you. He wants you to, so to speak, walk on the water with him in the service. It may be in a song service, a worship service. I don't know. But he's calling us out, and it's only us. It's only ourselves that decide, am I going to get out of the boat? Am I going to worship Jesus? Am I going to spend my time with him? walk on the water and then share an encounter with him, it's up to us. And Peter got out of the boat. Was walking on the water. Just him and Jesus walking on the water. Above all the turbulence, above all the distractions, it was just Peter and Jesus on the water. Walking on the water. The two of them. Only the two of them. Until Peter started looking around and he started feeling the waters and he got fearful. He got distracted from what Jesus called him to do. And, because he saw he was out of the boat. And he knew man does not walk on the water. This is not right. So he started looking at what was going on. And he got distracted from his vision with Jesus and he began to sink. I read that and I said, he began to sink. How do you begin to sink? How do you begin to sink? Have you ever been on a dock in a lake? You walk out off the dock onto the water. Do you begin to sink? Down you go. There is no beginning to sink when walking on the water. That's out of the question. So, Peter begins to sink. He didn't just vanish. He began to sink. He began to feel the waves hitting his side or his legs. He began to waver in his faith. But he knew where to go. He called out to Jesus. Jesus, help! And that's what we need to do. If you're feeling yourself, if you're feeling your faith wavering, you need to call out, Jesus, help! Help! And he's right there. Pick you up, take you back to the boat, and with an outstretched arm, Jesus saved Peter from all the turbulence that was going on around him. And there are times when we're that way. I mean, we're human. We look at distractions, and he's not wanting us to be focused on the distraction. He wants us to focus on him and him alone. And what did Jesus say to Peter? You of little faith, why did you doubt? And I believe that's a word of encouragement, because I believe that the character of the Father would say it something like this. Peter, what happened? Peter, what happened? You were doing so well. You were doing so well. Why did you begin to doubt? Why did you doubt? But while Jesus was encouraging Peter, he said nothing to the other disciples still in the boat. This was a God and Peter moment. This was an encounter that Peter had with Jesus, that all the other disciples missed it. What could he even say to the other disciples who were still in the boat? What could he say to them? I thought about this. Well, guys, if you're ever going to want to go far with me, do the things I'm calling you to do, you must get out of the safety of the boat. And I really believe that's where we all are here today. We must step out of the safety of our boat. Because Jesus will push you, he will stretch you, he will prod you, poke you, he will get you to move out of your comfort zone, out of the safety of the boat. Because he has a work for us to do. Each one of us, he's got work for you. He's got kids waiting for you guys. He's got kids waiting for you. I mean, but it might take a little stretching till you're ready. But he's got that plan for you. He's got stuff planned for each and every one of us. That when we're ready, He'll launch us into our ministries. He will. He really will. So Jesus helps Peter back in the boat. This is funny. After Peter's in the boat, the winds die down. Isn't that funny? I mean, I can almost imagine Peter, why didn't you do that when we were out there? Why didn't you calm the storm when I was trying to walk in the water? You know something? Those that were in the boat, after the winds and waves calmed, then they worshiped Jesus. I find that, wow, you missed the opportunity of this miraculous thing that Peter did. But you only worshiped Jesus when it affected you, when your boat was, now when it calms, then they worshiped. Then they worshiped.
The good times.
And the good times, and that's, I mean, there are times of stretching that we want to be in. And they were only joyful, rejoicing when it affected them. And that's why, like in our ministries and stuff, we're not always going to see people agree with us, jump on board, you know. But as long as you're there with Jesus, you keep your eyes on Jesus, you're going to do the things that he asks you to do. If we want to have an experience like Peter did, we have to go deeper into the, we have to go deeper. We have to go deeper into the water, into him. We have to push in. We have to make an attempt. It did not and will not come if you're satisfied in staying in the boat. You will not have the walking on the water experience if you're satisfied with being in the boat where you're at. Because God is challenging us. Peter wouldn't have had that experience if he would have stayed in the boat with the others. He'd have had the waves calm, but I found a correlation with this, because I started looking up things that happened to Peter. It was on Peter's confession, Christ will build his church. It was Peter's shadow healed the sick. It was Peter who performed a dead raising. It was Peter who spoke up at the day of Pentecost. Can you see a correlation here? It was Peter's desire to go deeper. It was Peter's willingness to jump out of the boat into a stormy sea to be with the Master. And it's Peter's ministries that raised the dead, healed the sick. We must separate ourselves from others if we want to go deeper in him. We really do. Because he does not want us just playing church. He wants us to be his church. He wants us to rely totally on him. Not just be satisfied where we are and what we have right now. He wants us to go deeper. Deeper. You may feel you're in a situation where Jesus asks you to do something. All of a sudden it becomes crazy. It becomes crazy and you feel you stirred up a hornet's nest. But I'm telling you right now, you keep your eyes on Jesus. If he got you into the storm, he will get you out. It's the faith in him that will get us through. And I also, Jesus, he didn't stop the wind and the rain until Peter was back in. Because if you're in a storm and he always saves you from it, are we ever going to learn how to get out of that storm? No, we won't. The enemy will continually be able to pound you with the same storm if we don't. He's got it made. If Jesus would always reach down and grab me out of the sea, I will never walk on water. I will never get over my trial. I will never get over what I'm going through. So Jesus is there. His ultimate goal is to help you get through your storm so that you can grow. So the enemy will never be able to bother you with that same problem again. If you cannot get there, he is there just like Peter was. If you fail, he'll pick you up and bring you back to the safety of the boat. But his ultimate desire is, can we get through the storm? Can we make it through the storm with him? And that's where we want to be able to do, be able to say, okay, in closing, I want to leave you this one thought. There's a book in heaven that records all we have done, and we will be accountable for its context and that. And 2 Corinthians 5:10 says, "For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each of us may receive what is due us for the things done while in the body, whether good or bad." I want my book to say, Doug got out of the boat. I want Jesus to know that. I got out of the boat. When he called me, I got out and I walked on water. Well, at least I tried to walk on water. I tried. I'm trusting the Lord. I don't want my book to read, Doug stayed in the comfort of the boat. I don't want that on my mind. And worshiped me when I calmed his seas. I don't want that in my mind. I want Doug tried to walk on the water. Doug was willing to step out for me. Doug tried. His heart was right. And that's where the church is today. Too many Christians are content to stay in the boat, waiting for their miracles to come. Instead, stepping out with Jesus, get out of the boat and create your miracle with him. Create your miracle with him. And I want to encourage you all tonight. Jesus is calling you. Step out by faith and meet him in the storm, because he will be there with you. He will be there with you.